And to what degree you guys feel that you're able to do some of your best work when you have, again, all that politics involved, you have the tight time scales, you've got the studios touching. Is it possible for composers to rise to even greater heights of work with all these new pressures involved? Or do you think that in many ways your most creative work, the work that you're most proud of, happens in those projects where you do have enormous sort of luxury of time but maybe not money? Mark, why don't you touch upon that? I mean, you did Mrs. Soulful and Never Cry Wolf, and I assume you had a nice amount of time on both those projects versus now where it's a lot tighter.
Yeah, I think certainly in the beginning, I was not trained. You can be trained to become a film composer now. There's schools where you can go get a degree in this as a profession and as an art form. And it sounds like none of us did that. So at some point, one has to actually have the experience of doing it for the first time. And I think that at that point, one does need time. It's however fast you can do it to the degree that it's the proper quality and the right score. And I think it's a rare individual who can just walk in with no background or no training and just do it perfectly right away. Having said that, though, I don't think that time is necessarily a factor for ultimate quality, because the difference between composition and the job of a film composer is quite dramatic. And you notice a lot of quote-unquote composers would never dare do this job. It's one thing to sit down and write a piece of music. It's a whole other thing to step into a group team effort and make a film with that team. And that's basically what our job is. So there's a whole social dynamic, there's a whole ability to work with others, an ability to communicate with others, to understand, to duplicate a vision by another artist and figure out how to help that vision in your own language, which is way beyond just, well, now I'm in C major, how do I get to A flat major, and is this G sharp really the best note for this melody? So I think for me, that's what you need the time to learn. You need the time to figure out all those pitfalls that you'll fall into. The fact that the producer comes and listens and isn't smiling at the end of the meeting is of huge significance. Right? The director may, say that you're a genius and he loves everything, but actually the guy that's writing the checks doesn't love it. You're probably out of work. This is what it may take a number of films to figure this stuff out, if you haven't had the luxury of mentoring working under a mentor who tells you that. And so I'm being very long-winded just to get to the point, though, that I actually think I've written some of my best scores in the shortest period of time. Once I got how the gig works, so I didn't make the mistake of ignoring the producer or figuring out that it's actually the editor's girlfriend who is deciding how this film is going to end up. Those are the things you have to notice, you have to be aware of, and that's what the gig is. But to write a piece that establishes the new quality of your own artistic vision, you can do that in an afternoon. You can do that in 10 minutes.
That's 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Of writing.
So, The River Runs Through It, which was a landmark score for me because it did get nominated, and it sort of brought me to a whole other level of ability to handle the symphony orchestra. I did it in 2.5 weeks. So time is not a factor in that regard, in my humble opinion.
David, you have some thoughts on this?
No, I completely agree that sometimes it depends on just where you're at and your level of inspiration at that moment. If you're in an inspired state, it's that 40 seconds to a minute pop of that one theme that you need that's great.
But that's where you want the time, is to be able to absorb the project and, get in the mind of the director, the producer, whoever you've got to, write this music for. You want the time to sort of get to the nitty-gritty of it. The actual writing, writing to me is it's like a muscle almost, the more you do it, the better you get at it. If you don't write for a while, I don't know about you guys, but if I don't write for a while, the first things that I start writing are usually pretty crap. And then you sort of got to get back into it, and you're there, So if you've been writing and you've had the time to absorb the project and get into it, you can actually write the stuff quite quickly. But you do need that time to be knowing what you're supposed to be writing, and able to feel the project, you know.
If you ever write something that you're happy yourself with, that also, as you say, satisfies the wife of the producer. I remember doing a picture once where I got the message back that the producer's wife had watched the rough cut and everyone was so unattractive in the movie, she wanted the music to try and make it look a bit better. She said this, I can't keep on music. But that, that was a bit of an education in actually, what we're asked to do. But the real trick is to write music you feel yourself, you're happy with, as well as satisfying with those other arrangements.
And you kind of know when you're in the pocket. I mean, I think what's really interesting about this process is that a lot of times there's a process of elimination, I think, among composers, because there's many great music artists who attempt to work in score, and it's a horrible disaster. And part of it, I think, has to do with the flexibility of the creative process and to what degree you're able to sort of morph your creative skills to serve a vision and, to some degree also be able to communicate that vision to the director and the producers who are involved so they have confidence in what you're doing and they feel that they're encouraging you in the right direction. Because if you lose that confidence early on, it's a real uphill battle to be able to bring your best work forward. Can anyone talk a little bit about sort of the differences between working with a director that you have a really great collaborative relationship with versus ones where it doesn't work as well? Javier, you spoke a little bit about the two experiences you had with Guillermo and that they were sort of very different in a way. Yeah. You had to sort of shift from it being difficult to being quite fluid.
Yeah, I can say with Guillermo it's very easy because he's very good with, for me, filming and also with music. And also has a personality which is very positive and always very easygoing, no? And the difference, I think, is like day to night is such a big difference, no? The difference is the confidence they have in themselves, mainly, no? Is what I think when you see somebody who is not confident with what he does, then everything is wrong from the beginning because you have to make him confident about himself, about yourself, about music, about filming, about everything. And it becomes a very big war which is losing time all the time. No? And if not, everything is very clear. And if you sometimes lack of confidence because you don't have always the best moment, they have to help you because they are the directors and it's his job to put everybody in the right direction. No? So that's the difference for me.
Yeah, that says it nicely. Anyone else have an example, John?
I just would love to chime in. I really concur with everyone. The problem is, I think that every situation is so different. You may get a very, one time I might get a very confident director who knows what they want. Other times I get a brilliant director who doesn't know what they want, but it is a process with them. It just does depend. And I would concur that sometimes, for me, if I don't have a lot of time, it almost works in my favor because if I have 2 or 3 weeks to, let's say, replace a score, then I know that hopefully I'm not getting a lot of phone calls from a lot of the executives at studios and producers because there's no time. And I would also concur that when the time stretches out, there's a lot more potential for a lot more people to become involved. So I really, for me personally, because I guess I like Mark, I've been doing this a while, it is different every time. And you have to really absolutely learn very quickly, I think, who the boss is. And if it's not the director, who is it? But yeah, for me, it's a little different every time because sometimes it can work in your favor. Other times, if you have too much time, I don't know about you guys, but I tend to think about it too much, And I sort of, everything I write, I hate, as Clint was saying, and, when you're trying to sort of get back into a groove. So I would say it's all over the map for me. Sometimes it's very simple. Other times, depending on who's in the room, it can be very difficult.
I also consider every job that I do with the director or whoever that I'm more of like a co-writer with them. I mean, I really am. I mean, I feel like, they're definitely, their input in the composition is so prevalent that I feel more like I'm a co-writer than than the writer. It's the way I like to look at it. It's a safe way.
I once had a director that said, and you've worked with this director, I'm not going to say who it is, who said, triplets aren't scary.